Greetings! Welcome to the Devlog for Alpha 5 of Update 99 of Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades. We're going to start off as always with a quick sound check. Make sure your speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful. So what have we got for you this week? Well, it has been a while since we have had a week that was focused on new guns, on some new toys. So let's dive right in and check them out. So the theme this week is exotic revolvers, and we've got a weird one to start with for sure. This is the Dardic 1500, a magazine-fed revolver. That's right, we can pop this open. You can see there's a magazine in there, and it takes these super goofy looking cartridges called Trowns, which are triangular polymer encased cartridges. We can pop one in there. When we close this, that gets fed up into the cylinder. As we pull the trigger, we can actually see our loaded chamber indicator there for our round. We can fire it, and then, oh, boop, as the cylinder in there rotates, it ejects the cartridge that was just fired. Isn't that goofy? We've also got an equally goofy stripper clip for it to help us. Granted, it's not in a convenient denomination because this is a 10-round clip. This is a 13-round internal magazine, which we can pick up some rounds there. So the magazine's now full, but this is the Dardic 1500. Says it holds 15 rounds. From what I can best tell from their diagrams and advertisements, what they mean is that this is a 13+2 revolver, and that we can put one into the cylinder there, cock the revolver, and then put another round in. I'm not 100% on that, but their ads for this very gun seem to point to that being the capacity of the weapon in that configuration. There we go. So, I mean, kind of useful, actually, in terms of how many rounds are in it, but it's bulky and odd, and I'm sure in real life is a bit more suboptimal. We've also got this goofy carbine version of it, which, man, if that doesn't say first attempt in the shop room, I don't know what does. Pop that in there. These horrible irons. Bammo! So there you have it. The Dardic family of very strange revolvers. This was actually requested back at the end of our first Meat Miss contest, and back then I had so much less practice in implementing really complex mechanical systems, so I sort of kicked this one down the road and then forgot about it for like years at a time, and then finally got around to getting it in the game like 4 years later. So there we have it, the Dardic family of very strange magazine-fed revolvers. Speaking of stuff that I promised folks far too long ago, there's also an attachment that was requested by another winner that has been now implemented. This is a bit of a novelty attachment. This is called the Telescope Scope. We can pop this on here onto it's the deagle is just long enough for it, but obviously this should probably go on a rifle. It's a it's a telescope scope, super huge lens, which is convenient. No crosshair because obviously it's just a nautical telescope, but we can actually grab the back lens and go woo like that with it, and then really zoom up on what we are shooting at. This is ridiculous. Of course, we can just have it slightly more moderate like that. You know, just in case you want to see something very far away very briefly, and then go back to a standard view, the telescope scope. I hope you enjoy it. Moving right along, we've got another exotic revolver for you, courtesy of Sergey. This is the OTS 38, which is a stealth revolver, basically. This is now probably the quietest semi-auto gun in H3. It fires a special type of cartridge. This is 7.62 by 42 millimeter, I think. But it is held together via a moon clip because this is not a rimmed cartridge and it's going into a revolver cylinder. It is also kind of weird looking because this has a piston on the inside. So the primer is struck, the powder ignites, the piston slams forward, fires the round out, and then seals the cartridge. So this purportedly, there's no video of it firing that I can find, has no real report to it, and no smoke comes out. So this is our ultimate stealth revolver. You can probably hear my squeaky Vive trigger more than the gun firing. Super cool. And obviously when you eject it now, the whole moon clip of empty rounds comes out. This was a pain in the butt to get working. So there was a lot of work just to make this dang thing function, but for sneaky times, it was absolutely worth it. OTS 38, looking sweet. And then for our third exotic revolver, we have the Webley Fosbury, which is very similar to the Webley Mark IV that is already in the game. It's a top break, fires this terrible 4.55 Webley cartridge, but this is a recoil-operated revolver. So each time we fire, the whole top part of the frame goes back and rotates the cylinder and cocks the hammer. I'm going to fire it like this so we can see it in action. Now, in real life, that would reciprocate way faster, but I've slowed it down because, I mean, it's cool. It's the same operating principle. Well, yeah, awesome. It's the same operating principle as the Unica 6, which, because I implemented it for the Fosbury, backported that change over to the Unica. So cool. Wonderful, strange revolvers. Good stuff. And then our last toy in this alpha is finally a range finder. You can see it's got a rail on the underside even, so if you want to put like a rail extender on this and then a bipod for like a super stable platform looking at targets distantly, there you go. I have made this dirt simple to use. You just pick it up, you look through it, you get a range marker that is super clear and large to make sure that it's super legible for folks with lower res HMDs. The little ring there lets you know what point it's aiming at. Simple, easy to use. Hopefully this will be useful for those of you trying to improve your distance sniping and range estimation, as well as, you know, bragging to folks about how far away you're shooting stuff. So there you have it, rangefinder. It is under the utility section of the item spawner. Anywho, let's jump out of VR and talk about the other changes in this week's alpha. There's a whole bunch of really important changes to take and hold. So, what else have we got this week? Well, most of this week's effort actually went into sort of ingesting a lot of the feedback that has come back involving our new take and hold level, thinking about balance, and also like anytime I do something like this where there's some new sort of take and hold content, I try to look back at aspects of the game's sort of balance and progression that maybe I just haven't considered in a long time and ask questions about whether things are still how they should necessarily be. And so there were some big changes to our supply stations. The first is that the ammo station, which you're used to sort of getting new single rounds out of and reloading mags, has two new options on it. It can now spawn a speed loader or a clip for any compatible gun that it detects for free. And so this is, I mean, this should have been done a long time ago. Stripper clips were designed to be disposable. Arguably, a lot of speed loaders are, and so the idea is that any guns that use those will now, especially even in limited ammo mode, have different sorts of roles in terms of, instead of just having to fill your pockets up with loose ammo, you'll now be able to actually just grab clips and things like that. And it ends up, how to put it, being a little bit of a trade-off between, do I want a higher capacity gun that I have 2 mags for, or do I want this lower capacity gun that I can just get out of the ammo station as many stripper clips as I want for? So hopefully that should add some interesting decisions. The big change involves our mag duplication station, which now has 2 functions instead of 1. Instead of just having in the center this sort of mag duplication with a sort of cost that's given to you, all mag duplication has been reduced to a single credit cost, and there is now a 2 credit ability to upgrade a magazine if a magazine that matches the magazine type exists anywhere in H3's system that has a higher capacity. So if you drop a 20 round Stanag on, you can pay 2 credits to upgrade that to a 30. If you drop a 30 on, I think probably the 60 round casket mag will come out next, pretty sure, either 50 or 60, I can't remember. And so what that means is that you are going to have to learn to a certain extent which one of those upgrade tiers are worth it more than others. There's a lot of magazines in H3 where you've got like stick right up to drum, so like a 30 right up to 50 or 75. There's others where it's more granular, so whether that 2 credit cost for the upgrade is going to be worth it is going to have a lot to do with where you are in a progression, how many spare credits you have, and which weapon we're talking about. But the goal as a whole is to basically give you more early and mid-game options. I've noticed a lot within the sort of meta of Take and Hold, a lot of folks just don't purchase equipment because they're holding out for getting like a 10 or a 12 credit high capacity weapon drop. And I don't necessarily, that isn't the most interesting thing theoretically. So this system allows you, in certain cases, can reward you for spending the 3 credits on an earlier SMG or on a lower capacity rifle, because there's, a fairly good chance that you're going to get one where the magazine can be upgraded later. So, but then again, that'll be a lot character dependent, and this is a roguelite, so anything that adds in more gambling is probably apt. So let's see what else. I think that's, I fixed a couple just random sort of take and hold bugs related to those stations. There was like a token cost desync that was occurring when you would like re-roll one of the stations on the item shop that should be fixed. And then outside of that, with all of the new revolvers, I went in and I cleaned up and I updated a bunch of revolver code. I have made the triggers on the revolvers act closer to automatic handguns, which should hopefully, for anyone who's been noticing, say on Rift or Quest, that basically you could pull the revolver trigger absurdly fast ever since that Steam VR fix went in. That's no longer going to be the case. There now actually is some inertia to the trigger, similar to with automatic handguns, and that should be super consistent now across platforms. I fixed and changed some things involving cylinder arm locking logic, and I think that has fixed. There's a rare bug where some folks have mentioned they fire like one shot with a revolver and it just dies past that, and they can't fire it or interact with it past that. That should be fixed, hopefully. Let's see here. Yeah, and then a bunch of changes in the back end. That is, those of you who make custom content or work on the systems that support custom content, there have been some back end API changes. Basically, there's been this problem for a while where anyone trying to create a custom gun, because there's a field in the metadata for all guns that have to reference directly what magazines are compatible with them. Anyone who wanted to add a new Stanag compatible gun to the game couldn't directly reference those magazines. And so basically, I think one of the sort of custom content loading mods basically had to forcibly load and cache all of that information right at the beginning, which on certain slower and older computers could hang or just take a long time. So I'm working with the author of that to make a bunch of that unnecessary. Just be aware that to do so requires actually updating the metadata on a lot of those modded weapons. So there may still be a transition time as authors go back, add those extra fields into their content and re-upload them. So definitely, if you run modded, don't just like settle for just continuing to run your older versions of things. Check in with in I think Thunderstore and in the modding channels of our Discord to actually make sure that you're up to date relative to the version of the game that you're running, because a lot of stuff behind the scenes is changing to adapt to changes in our item database and taken hold, and older versions will probably break. So just thought you'd like to know. And then lastly, I've lengthened the initial aiming time that Sosegs require at distance. I know there have been some complaints in Northeast Dakota about how fast Sosegs see and react to you, and I did a deeper dive on it. I didn't have time to change this week everything I want to change. I started to change a few lines, and I was like, nope, this is going to take a whole week, and if I tear it apart now, I won't be able to get it back together in time for Friday. But basically, I've been able to lengthen the amount of time that it takes for them to acquire their target after they've already perceived you and gone into their skirmishing state, which should hopefully give you a little bit more tolerance at the beginning of an engagement. But the problem, and it took me a little while to actually tease apart my architecture and understand what was happening, is that even though back in the day I added it such that they have a sort of internal alertness status relative to sound, where they don't immediately aggro upon the first sound of yours they hear, they take a little moment. If a single one of their vision checks sees a target, regardless of distance, if it's within their quote-unquote view cone, which narrows at distance, they instantaneously aggro, they see that target, and they go into their skirmishing state. I don't actually have... I've realized what I need is almost like an intermediate sensory buffer where things coming into the perceptual system need to accrue being seen for a certain amount of time before the target priority system, which is almost like their working memory of what they've perceived, actually acknowledges that it has seen that event, if that makes sense. So I need to make essentially the perceptual curve at the initial contact with an entity or an event be able to be gradual. And I still haven't figured out how I'm going to get that in architecturally or where that should go based on my abstractions, because I do think things like turrets should still visually engage immediately, because those are computer vision systems. They don't have the same sort of quote-unquote flaws as a meat person seeing things at distance. But just note that it's something that I'm still working on, and I want to make that a little more interesting and a little more nuanced, so that those of you who like playing Northeast Dakota at a really long range, I'm using a bolt action, I'm using a scope, will be able to engage in stealthier gameplay without getting spotted really, really easily out at 200 meters. So yeah, just to let you know, I am listening to you folks in regards to that stuff, and I have some ideas on how to make that work better. Truth be told, this is the first environment in the game where it's super duper relevant, and so I finally now have a testing environment where I can start adding a whole bunch more nuance and interest to Soseg perception at range, and adding in imperfection that isn't just making them blind or making them perfect, but actually having them, have a range of behavior that is nuanced, somewhat unpredictable, but at the same time you can count on. If you're laying prone, not moving at 250 meters, you should be difficult to see. And right now you aren't as difficult to see as you should be for the bots. So I want to fix that. So yeah. Anywho, that just about does it for this week. This is going to be the last week that this alpha is on the Taken Hold alpha branch. Assuming everything goes well, let me look at my calendar here. I am probably going to go full release onto the main branch with update 99 next week unless something goes wrong or some of the major mod people go, hold on, wait a minute, need a little more time, in which case I will probably just move this directly onto the normal alpha branch and then mainline the week after. So I don't know which, but either way, it's going to be coming off of this branch, and this branch is going to be going away next week. So thanks to everyone who's been helping work on this, and I'm really happy with how it is all coming together, and certainly getting a lot of exercise arm swinging my way through the new level. I hope you are too. So yeah, enough rambling for me. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you all soon. Peace.